Hello and welcome to A Cup of Joe. Like I said in the last episode, kind of trying to make up for lost episode here. So, recording a second one right after the first one. Um, I think I started to say this in the last episode, but I kind of went off rambling. I really want to find some non coffee subjects to talk about. Uh, that's really actually surprisingly difficult for me because all I do every day is think about, write about, talk about coffee. So that is like the primary thing on my mind. There are like other subjects, but I have no idea. Like, I don't want to go rambling on my obsession of backpacking and getting into backpacking because that doesn't seem. I'm thinking like philosophical questions where I can ramble about a concept, but it doesn't necessarily have to do anything with coffee. Just because that seems to be can be like an interesting thing for this format, perhaps. Maybe shoot, I don't know. Maybe I could do some like non-coffee related book reviews. Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I do have a coffee topic for today, or rather, a topic for today, and it is coffee. I'm also realizing at the moment that I don't have uh, Halaya in the video. I was having her there for a while, but she's in a larger pot now, so she can't sit on that sill. Before I sign off on this video, I'll go into the other room and show you how she's doing because the coffee plant be growing and growing well. So this is, I guess, kind of a non sequitur of coffee topics because I haven't been talking about it at all. But I had this like conversation slash argument. I don't know, on the internet a while back, and just as a point of interest, I think it's generally a really bad idea to get into arguments on the internet. The anonymity of it means that people, I mean, you just can't have a discussion for the most part. Um, or rather, it's really hard to. I think I like this format because people who do reach out to have discussions, as far as my experience with all of you watching, those of you who I've had discussions with in the comments or by email or anything like that, it's all been really wonderful. What I'm talking about is like going into other like internet communities and trying to have a conversation about coffee. Always tends to be, I don't know, it feels pointless. So this argument was about when you're getting into brewing coffee at home, what is one of the most important tools that I've always said is to get a grinder. Like start grinding your coffee fresh. That is one of the most important things. The counter argument is it's more important for the grind quality to be high than for it to be fresh. So the counter argument was don't get a grinder, invest in your brewing equipment first and wait until you get a really expensive grinder, but go get your coffee ground by your coffee roaster because the coffee roaster will have a commercial grinder that is going to grind your coffee to a really high quality, um, like much more uniform grind size. Um, and these things are really important in terms of even extraction. So this is like the hitch of the point. What's more important? Now, um, my stance on this has always been, for those getting into brewing coffee at home, is to get a grinder. It's one of the first things you can do to, like, quote unquote, increase the quality of your brew. Is get a grinder, buy coffee whole bean, and then grind it right before you brew. And this is because there are aromatic and uh, taste compounds in coffee which disappear rapidly once you grind the coffee. Like they're already starting to disappear in their whole bean form. But when you break down the whole bean and create all that extra surface area, it just disappears all of that much faster. So if you compare like a fresh ground coffee to a pre-ground coffee, even like a day or two apart, you're missing a huge amount of vibrancy in the pre-ground coffee. And I think as an experience of getting into brewing your own coffee, it's really important to enjoy that vibrancy. And of course, the counter argument is that if you get the pre-ground coffee in a higher grade of ground quality, your extraction is going to be more even, and you're going to end up with a better cup of coffee than with the pre-ground, or than with the fresh ground coffee. So, again, just to summarize, pre-ground, higher quality grind versus fresh ground, arguably lower quality grind, and that quality has to do with the the like the size and shape of the grinds, and the pre-ground will technically have a more even extraction because of the higher quality grind versus the fresh ground, but the fresh ground will have more vibrancy to extract than the pre-ground. I think that I think it's an interesting conundrum. You can get to that really high grind quality if you spend a lot of money on your grinder, but if you're getting like $100 to $150 like good quality but still entry level burr electric burr coffee grinder, you're going to have like a good quality ground like on a grand scheme of things, but it's going to be a much higher variation size and shape than the commercial coffee grinder. Um, you're going to end up with more fines in the cup, and it is not going to be as even an extraction. Uh, but I think that there's no way to there's no way to account for the fact that you lose vibrancy when you pre-grind. That to me is one of the most important things in enjoying your own freshly brewed coffee, is that vibrancy that you get from extracting coffee very, very, very shortly after you grind it. Uh, if you wait, you lose a lot. Doesn't matter how even the extraction is, due to grind quality, you're losing vibrancy. So this is my stance. If you're getting into coffee, especially, it's not just that; it's also the habit and practice, the ritual. Grinding your coffee right before you brew is this really, to me, and I know a lot of people, enjoying ritual of making coffee. You get to you get to enjoy also the aroma of the fresh ground coffee right before you brew. And there are all these components that make it something really special. I think that what I probably need to do is compare, is do an actual comparison, and maybe I'll do a video of this. Is fresh ground arguably lower quality grind versus pre-ground um, uh, from from a higher quality commercial grinder, um, just to actually put this idea to bed. But even if we can accept that the pre-ground version is arguably more evenly extracted, I think that the trade-off is worth getting the vibrancy and the ritual and practice of grinding and making your own coffee. So that's still my number one recommendation. Those of you who want to get into brewing and enjoying your own coffee at home, or who want to upgrade that experience, start with a grinder, electric burr coffee grinder. I can put some recommendations below the video of coffee grinders that I enjoy, the one that I use most regularly. So given all that, I would be interested to hear what your thoughts and opinions are. Do you think on one side or the other of that argument. Um, do you have experience trying those? What do you think? I would be interested to hear from people who prefer the pre-ground option, and forget the convenience aspect, because yes, there is convenience in having your coffee pre-ground. All you got to do is just scoop it into the brewer and add water versus the whole bean coffee where you have to, um, of course, grind it before you brew it. There's one instance where I do pre-ground, and that's when I'm backpacking or traveling, and that's so that I don't need to carry around and worry about a grinder, even though I have a small hand grinder. Mostly, especially when I'm backpacking, I don't really care. I just go with the pre-ground option to make it easy. But so forgetting the convenience factor, I'd be interested to hear from those of you who prefer pre-ground from their roaster versus grinding at home. Let me know your thoughts. Comment below, and let's hear what y'all's experience is. All right, I almost forgot, or I did forget. I was going to show you my coffee plant and how she's doing. So let's take a look. All right, here she is. Alaya. Alhaya. I should probably figure out exactly that. But she's doing quite well. I just keep her regularly watered. She tends to get sun in the morning, and then she's pretty much in the shade for most of the day. And I think that's kind of what she prefers. And I provide fertilizer every couple of weeks. But that's where we're at. I think the last time, I want to say that she's grown like this much, essentially, since the last time she was on the video. It'll be interesting to see how this progresses. And I imagine that she'll stay in this pot through this growing season, and then I'll go into a much larger one next season. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.